Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of Golden Era.
In his book, The Discovery of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru says, "We can never forget the ideals that have moved our race, the dreams of the Indian people through the ages, the wisdom of the ancients, the daring of their thought, their splendid achievements. We will never forget them or cease to take pride in that noble heritage of ours. If India forgets them, she will no longer remain India, and much that has made her our joy and pride will cease to be." In the 50th year of India's independence, we celebrate the rich cultural legacy of our country. The treasured monuments which are brought to you in this series of films are also recognized by UNESCO as important milestones in the collective heritage of the world. In the 10th century, the Chandela dynasty rose to power in the ancient land of Vatsa, in the very heart of central India. In India's long history, this was the first time that this area, later known as Bundelkhand, rose to center stage politically. However, it was known for its cultural wealth, even since the times of the Purans and epic poems. Its sacred hills and forested groves were long the retreats of sages and ascetics. The Chandelas inherited a rich tradition of religious culture and architecture and gave to it their royal patronage. Many magnificent temples and palaces were built by them at their powerful hill forts of Kalinjar and Ajaygarh. The peace and prosperity ushered in by their stable rule were conducive to the achievement of new heights in artistic developments. The traditions of devotional art which flowed in this great land of Shiva thus flowered during the Chandela's reign. For centuries, the stone cutter had worked these cliff faces, bringing the unyielding stone alive to the touch of his chisel. Here, at Ajaygarh, is a sensitive depiction of the artist's empathy with the natural world. Now there rose the many beautiful monuments built by the Chandelas, fusing the traditions of the past and rising to a greater glory. The kings of this dynasty were connoisseurs of art, and the sculpture and architecture of their monuments displays an uncommon charm and vigor. At their capital city of Khajuraho came the culmination of their artistic genius. Here, between the 10th and 12th centuries, was created one of the most splendid temple cities in the history of the world. Under the inspired guidance of their rulers, The builders and sculptors were stirred to their best creative efforts. Out of the plains, the temples rose like mountains, reaching for the skies, lofty edifices vying with each other in height and beauty. More than 85 temples came to be built in the city dedicated to the gods, marking the first flush of the medieval Hindu Renaissance. 25 of these stand till today, providing a window to that glorious period. The massive platforms on which the temples are built are ornately carved with depictions of the life of the times. An interesting detail of men carrying a stone immortalizes the anonymous workers who built the temples. Royal and military processions depict the glory and power of the Chandela kings. There is an exuberance of details in these panels, which speaks of the vitality and prosperity of the times. Great armies, musicians, and hunters march in an endless procession around the entire base of the temples. These moments, frozen in stone, are also valuable as they are the only record of society then. The walls of these temples saw the profusion of sculpture in which every gesture, every nuance and mood is captured. The exuberance of a very prosperous period pulsates in these images. They are the finest record of the joy of living in those times. The great theme of the sculptors of Khajuraho is woman, a celebration of her in her myriad moods and moments, writing a letter, applying kajal to her eyes, dancing with joyous abandon, drying her hair, playing with a ball, looking in the mirror, painting her feet, pulling out a thorn. Woman, innocent, coquettish, smiling, infinitely seductive, infinitely beautiful, depicted in a wealth of detail, sharply etched, chiseled with consummate skill. The sculptor of Khajuraho invokes the auspicious image of woman, the symbol of abundance and fertility. He awakens the stone and fills it with her warm life and grace. Truly, this is the theme that most befittingly portrays the exuberance of life in the gracious rule of the great Chandelas. The ecstasy of the surrender of the soul to the divine is symbolized in the mithun or loving couples, sculpted in intense expressions of yearning on these walls. Beyond the languorous damsels and Mithun couples, on the higher reaches of the walls are the gods themselves, in praise of whom the Chandelas built these temples. Shiva, Parvati, Vishnu, Indra, Agni are all invoked to bless the rulers with their benevolent powers. The Purans tell us that the gods are pleased to live in places surrounded by pleasant gardens, adorned with flowers and natural beauty. Here stands the Lakshman, one of the earliest temples to be built at Khajuraho. Its inscriptions proclaim that this splendid home of Vishnu was built by King Yashovarman, and that it rivals the peaks of the mountains of snow. Yashovarman, who was also known as Lakshavarman, was one of the most powerful and valiant Chandela kings. In the plinth of the Lakshman temple is the victorious celebration of his powerful armies. Yashovarman won many battles against the mighty Rashtrakutas and greatly extended the territories of his dominion. The walls of the temple are a vibrant world, alive with exquisitely sculpted beings. The Apsaras, Sundaris, and divine figures made here have won universal admiration for their grace and charm. A fine quality of sandstone has been used here, which is very responsive to the chisel. The artists were able to create beautiful sculptures, capturing nuances of expressions and minute details of ornamental jewelry and elaborately coiffured hair. Extolling the beauty of the Lakshman temple, an inscription says, "The inhabitants of heaven, when they meet together at festivals, are filled with increasing delight and are struck by wonder at the sight of this temple." The Chandelas introduced the Panchayatan style of temples with 4 subsidiary shrines at the corners of the Jagati or platform. The Lakshman is the only temple where all 4 of these are still seen. From the soaring exteriors into the recesses of deeper knowledge. In the profusely ornamented Mahamandap, the beauty of Apsaras and other celestial beings welcomes the devotee on his journey. In the very heart of the temple, deep like the oceans, pleasing like the moon, charming, with a multitude of excellences, resides the Lord Vishnu. The ambulatory path surrounding the shrine is adorned with celestial attendants and representations of the many incarnations of Vishnu. Under a canopy, in front of the temple, stands a monolithic Varaha avatar of Vishnu. Exquisitely finished, the Varaha has 674 figures of gods and goddesses carved on his body. According to legend, Prithvi, the earth, was once submerged in the ocean. Lord Vishnu took the form of a boar and lifted her upon his tusks out of the waters. In the year 1002, Yashovarman's son, King Dhangadeva, completed the construction of a towering temple to Shiva, the Lord of Lords, known as the Vishwanath. Its dedicatory inscriptions proclaim, by that illustrious King Dhangadev, this temple was erected of Lord Shambhu, the chief of the gods, with its summit white like the autumnal clouds. Strikingly similar to the Vishwanath in plan is the largest and most magnificent temple of Khajuraho, the Kandariya Mahadev, dedicated to Lord Shiva. Adorning the temple on all sides are celestial nymphs, Mithun couples, gods and goddesses. The towering Shikhar, with its subsidiary replicas crowding at varying heights, presents a grand analogy to Mount Kailash, the abode of Lord Shiva. This exquisite temple, built by Dhangadev's grandson, Vidyadhar, is truly the jewel of Chandela art. Ever since the temples of Khajuraho were rediscovered over 150 years ago, there have been many attempts at restoration and repair. Presently, at the Jagadamba Devi temple, efforts are underway to chemically clean the stone and bring back its original glory. At some of these temples, the tradition of worship still continues. In the northern end of this group of temples stands the smaller but elegant Chitragupta temple, also made in the 11th century. This is one of the rare temples dedicated to the sun god. To the west of the group are the remains of a simple granite temple dedicated to the Chaussat yoginis. This is the oldest at the site and is believed to have been built in the 9th century. 5 kilometers from the village of Khajuraho is the southern group of temples. The Chaturbhuj is one of the best preserved temples here. The beautifully proportioned and graceful image of Lord Vishnu in the shrine is one of the finest sculptures at Khajuraho. Another magnificent temple dedicated to Shiva is the Duladev, the great Lord as the divine bridegroom. This is one of the last monuments of the creative phase at Khajuraho. The sculptures begin to display stereotypes, and the ebbing of artistic vitality is apparent. However, many of the images, though over-ornamented, echo the earlier beauty. Damaged apsaras in the interior still display a unique vitality and sense of movement. Among the grandest monuments of Khajuraho is the 10th century temple of Parsvanath. To the southeast of the village, it is seen amidst a group of new Jain temples. According to an inscription found here, this temple was built soon after the Lakshman, and its beautiful sculptures have a striking affinity to those of the Vaishnav temple. Their fine modeling, proportion, and poise places the divine figures carved here among the most refined images sculpted at Khajuraho. The gods and goddesses of the Hindu pantheon are represented here, as well as the Jain images. Next to the grand Parsvanath stands the temple dedicated to the Jina Adinath. This is a smaller temple of a later date, but is most elegantly sculpted. Here again, we see auspicious sundaris as well as the images of Hindu and Jain divinities. The temple is girdled by 3 bands of exquisite sculptures, including the most charming Nayikas. New Jain temples have also been built here, partly using the materials and sculptures of older temples, which must have once stood at the site. These present a curious blend of the old and the new. With the waning of the Chandela power in the 12th century, they shifted their political base from Khajuraho to their strategic hill forts. However, this city of many temple spires continued in its religious importance for many centuries. Ibn Battuta, who visited Khajuraho in the 14th century, speaks of a great pond near which are temples containing idols. At the center, And at the four corners of the ponds are cupolas of red stone, in which live yogis who have clotted their hair and let it grow as long as their bodies. Still scattered all over this ancient land are the numerous remnants of the glorious heritage of this once proud temple city of the gods. The temples of Khajuraho, from the 10th to the 12th centuries, mark one of the highest points in the tradition and development of temples in India. In this flourishing period of abundance, they flower and present one of the most beautiful chapters in India's art, one of the jewels of the legacy of our heritage.